Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Seepersod coming to you from Binghamton University. I'm very excited on behalf of the Alumni Association to welcome you to Binghamton Success Week. It seems so far away when we first started planning it, but here we are, April 1st, and today is the first of three events that we have as far as Success Week goes. We have a webinar today on AI 101, so thank you so much for joining us for that. We have a webinar planned for tomorrow, Friend or Foe, looking at the impact of AI on careers, and an in-person panel on Thursday in New York City as part of our Metro New York dimension of Binghamton Success Week. And so join us for one or all of these great events. It's just one part of what we offer here at the Alumni Association to support you. And we know the most important thing that you look for from the Alumni Association is support in helping you develop your career, developing yourselves professionally, and recognizing that that's what you need, that's what you want. We are here to provide that, and this week's programming is meant to do just that for you. So very excited to have you with us. And of course, this is one of many lifelong learning offerings that we have. Check out our website after the webinar today at binghamton.edu/alumni, binghamton.edu/alumni. All sorts of ways you can get engaged with us here at the university through events, volunteer opportunities, speaker series, webinar series, podcast series, all sorts of things going on here on campus. And you can plug in from anywhere in the world. That's the beauty of what we offer, and technology helps to make all of that happen. So again, after the show, check out the website, and I'll put that up again later as we get toward the end of the webinar. So a little bit of housekeeping before we bring in our featured speaker, who I know is very eager to talk to you. We know you'll have questions, and we want this to be interactive. That's really the point of the whole thing. So this should be fueled by your questions in addition to the content our presenter has. So as you have questions, you can certainly email these to me, and I'll put this graphic up several times during the webinar as time and space allow, sseepers@binghamton.edu. And whether you're watching on the Facebook page or on the microsite, should be a comment box there. Send in a question to the comment box, send it by email, and it's not one of those wait till the end and we get to your questions. We will mix them in as they come to us and where it makes sense to do so. And then, of course, we'll allow some time, about the last 10 minutes or so of today's program, for questions and answers. So start now if you would like, or at least start thinking of the question. You don't have to send it right this second unless you want to. So let's go ahead and bring in our featured speaker for today. Very excited to have Stacy Newman Winterfield from the class of 1999 coming to us from Jersey City and, of course, New Jersey. And she has a wealth of experience in UX and very familiar with artificial intelligence, has done a couple programs with us that have been very well received, works for JP Chase, and is a member of our Alumni Association Board of Directors. Stacy, welcome to the webinar. Thanks again for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Welcome to Success Week, everybody. I'm super excited to get started today with AI 101. So with that, why don't we go ahead and kick this off? And just as a note about this session in particular, this is not going to deep dive into any particulars about artificial intelligence or machine learning. This is merely to give an overview, so to align you on definitions and understandings and conceptually where we're at in the world today for artificial intelligence. And then from here, I have some next steps at the end if you want to continue your learnings as to how to do that. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So just to introduce myself, my name is Stacy, and like Steve mentioned, I'm a data engineer at JP Chase, and I'm managing a team of data scientists working in a space for employees here at the bank. I've been in technology for over 25 years, and I'm on my 7th year here at JP Morgan. I graduated from Binghamton with a degree in studio art, and I also have a master's from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. During my tenure here, I've filed 11 patents, and I've also become a prolific inventor here, meaning that I've filed over 5 patents, and I'm somebody who helps others with innovation at the bank. I've been a guest lecturer at several conferences, podcasts, and webinars on the topics of user experience, ethical AI, and innovation throughout the course of my tenure. And I've done user experience design work for several Fortune 500 companies. I'm currently in Jersey City today at our offices, and I reside in Regalsville, Pennsylvania, with my 3 children, Tilly, Murray, and Harry, and my husband, Kevin. So with that said, why don't we kick off the show? So I want everybody to kind of just take a second here, and we have a question. Have you used AI? And this might seem like a silly question, but it's really not intended to be. If we think about it today, there is AI all around us, but have you used it? And if so, what have you done using AI? If not, why have you been held? What's holding you back from using AI? Is it something to do with a barrier to entrance from cost, or just not the tools that your job is asking you to use it for, or possibly, and it's okay to be possibly not quite sure, maybe I have used some AI tools, maybe I haven't. Sometimes they're so invisible that they're doing a really good job at being invisible, so we're not even quite sure if we're actually using it. And just consider why you answered the way you did. And we're going to come back a little bit later, and we're going to add another question onto here, but just think about how you've used it, or if you haven't, and maybe you'll surprise yourself and learn something along the way. So the artificial North Star that I want to talk about is artificial intelligence is machine learning's ability to perform the cognitive functions we usually associate with human minds. This was a quote from McKinsey, and I really love this because this is truly what we're goaling for with artificial intelligence and our technology. We're truly trying to replicate human cognition and functions and decisioning. So ultimately, a machine can think and act on the same way that we can as humans. Now, we are not at that point yet, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's really the North Star of having to have a bot or a machine being able to help us, assist us in our day-to-day tasks, or to take work that might be repetitive or duplicative and make it simplified. So that way we can get down to the really cool stuff that we need to do or we want to do in our day-to-day lives and our work. So I want to start with aligning our language. And I think this is a big part of it. And I hear this all the time from different individuals, whether it be my job or just at life or with my family. And what I find is that we don't necessarily know we're interchanging terminology. So I just wanted to give us a brief overview because this will help level set about some of the terms and definitions. So when you hear them, whether it be in the news, whether it be through a blog, or whether it be through something that you're actually using, you actually know what it is and you can rightly associate it. So to start with, artificial intelligence, or AI, is really leveraging computers and machines to mimic and the problem solving and decision making capabilities of the human mind. So from that North Star that we talked about just a few minutes ago, this is what artificial intelligence aims to be. Machine learning is a branch of artificial intelligence and computer science, which focuses on the data and algorithms to imitate the way that humans learn and gradually improving its accuracy. There's several ways that we could talk about machine learning and how it works. And I'm sure lots of you have heard in the news about different types of models, or you've heard of OpenAI or Anthropic or one of the many others that are out there. And so they're ultimately using the machines to learn and improve, and so they can give you better outputs as they go. And part of that is large language models, LLMs, you might hear. And what they are is they are a deep learning algorithm that can recognize, summarize, translate, predict, and generate content using very large data sets. So like I just talked about OpenAI, ChatGPT is a great example that everybody knows. DeepSeek, which just came out recently, is another example of a large language model, as is Anthropic, Claude, go on Minstrel, Hugging Face has several of them, BERT, there's many out there. Generative AI as well, Gen AI, is a class of tools that can create and generate new content. And the content can be text, imagery, sound, code, by taking prompts from a user and running through a transformer that is trained with a very large data set. And it's synthesizing a lot of different data, and it can give a relevant response or output whenever it's prompted based on its data set. And it has some really neat factors into it that today you might not even be trained. It might not even be trained on specific data, but because of zero-shot learning, it can actually give you answers to other data sets or other information just by making comparisons. So to continue with aligning our language, natural language processing, which is NLP, is really a branch of AI that helps computers to understand, interpret, and manipulate human language. Agents, or you might hear of agentic AI in artificial intelligence, is a bot or an agent that really perceives its environment. It takes actions autonomously to achieve goals and can help improve the performance by through machine learning by acquiring knowledge as it goes. So you might be working with an agent today, maybe from a help desk or a call center. If you're using a online chat, you could be talking with a virtual bot today, which when it's asking you information, it's asking you so it can be more intelligent and give you a more concise response back. Neural networks. Neural networks is a machine learning model that's inspired by the human brain, and it's consisting of interconnected nodes that learn from data to make predictions or decisions. This is used as we are in our different models to be able to help predict and have outcomes. Deep learning is a type of machine learning that uses artificial neural networks to learn from the data. And ultimately, it's inspired by the human brain and can be used to solve a variety of problems, including recognition, natural language processing, and speech recognition. So we use it to kind of solve where it's getting into the more complexities of what we're asking for. So that just gives a baseline of some definitions, and these are handy dandy tools to keep in your box. So when you hear about something on the news or through an email, or you're being asked to do something, you can reference these to say like, okay, I understand what this piece of what they're talking about a little bit better. So in the AI landscape as well, I kind of wanted to give you an overview picture as to what does this mean. So we just talked about a lot of these different terms and definitions. And so if you want to think about it, artificial intelligence is the umbrella. So it kind of covers everything. And then contained within there is the machine learning. From machine learning, contained in there is the deep learning. And then from deep learning is contained the generative AI. So hopefully this will give you a better oversight as to how we think about the constructs of artificial intelligence and where each of the different pieces reside. So generative AI in this requires the deep learning, which is part of machine learning, which is part of artificial intelligence. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a mental model as to how they're structured together and how they kind of play off of each other. So to give a little bit of history of artificial intelligence, it's not new. Even though we hear about it a lot recently, it's actually something that's been around since the 1950s. And the term AI was actually coined in 1956. And so, like I said, neural networks are really the first thinking machines that we had. And the first chatbot, which was called Eliza, was created in 1966. So again, these things are not necessarily that new, but because we've had so many push forwards and we've seen a lot of artificial intelligence make the news, it's become more relevant in our day-to-day as well. In the 80s through about 2010, machine learning had become much more popular. Then right after that, we went into deep learning, which really started to drive a lot of the AI that we see today. And today we have a lot of the generative AI, and we're doing a lot of disruption. And I think that we see something new in the news every single day about what AI can do. And I'm going to give a little bit of a comparison coming up about what AI could do a year ago when I gave a talk on AI versus what it can do today, just to talk about how fast this technology is really moving. And it's not just for data scientists or for developers. Artificial intelligence is for everyone. And one of the ways that we all become, confident in using it and working with it is to not shy away from it and to really, go full bore at it and really understand and work with it and have it be part of our everyday lives. I'm going to go to the next slide. And
Hi, if I could
Sure.
just jump in with a question, and I'll bring
Sure.
down the slides for a second to make us a little bit bigger, and then I'll bring the slides back up. And just a couple of questions. One is a viewer question, and one is actually for me, but I'll start with the viewer question. And even got a little fancy, made a banner to put at the bottom of the screen. Could you please provide a real world example to show how these different terminologies apply? So I think it's referring to something we had a couple slides back.
Similar the terminology itself. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. You'll probably see it, but if we think about it, so we talked a little bit about large language models, which is a form of machine learning. Machine learning is ultimately taking those data sets and it's applying it to give real world outputs. When we think about it, there could be small models that just do something particular, like they're solving it's like a chatbot just doing a input output thing, or it could be something that's a large language model such as like I mentioned, like GPT, where you can have it write, you could have it summarize text, or you could have it do speech recognition, or you could have it do something like create a summary email for you. There's a lot of ways to use it. The actual other pieces like the deep learning and the neural networks, those are kind of like the innards of what make up the machine learning itself. So it's actually how they connect, and it's ultimately working like the human brain. So there's a lot of different connections that take place under the covers to ultimately get to the outcome that it has based on the different algorithms that it's using and based on the different learning capabilities that it's employing. So it could be doing something that's like supervised learning, where we're giving it information and we're telling it what we're training the model on. It could be something that's unsupervised, where it's kind of going out from a Gen AI perspective and it's looking at what's around it, what's in the world, and it's understanding from there to deduce to give back some information. In scenarios like that, it could be anything from image generation to song generation, music generation, to, like I said, writing an essay, as you're not starting from a blank slate anymore. Or it could be today solving math problems as well. So there's a lot of things that it could be doing. At your basic most form of AI, I think we could say, like, look at Siri, look at Alexa. These are things that are AI. They're AI agents. They've been around for a long time, and they're bots that are helping to do some task-related information. I think that kind of hopefully covers a little bit. If you would like to talk more about this, I'm more than happy to set up time to talk about some more real-world examples, but I'm going to show some as well as part of the slides as well.
Well, thank you for that. And because you had mentioned chatbots on a previous slide, it made me think about one place that we commonly encounter chatbots, and it's through customer service. You want to buy something, and the chatbot assistant is there to answer questions. I've always found it to be very unhelpful. And it'd be interesting to get your take on it. Am I asking it too much, or is it really just meant to just only answer just very, very basic questions, and the limitation is just very high on the technology side, and it's not able to dissect whatever my real problem is that seems to exceed the capacity of this thing?
So that's a great question. I think we all are frustrated by the chatbot where it's giving us 3 options to click from an answer. And we're going, I don't want any of those. That's not what I want. I need somebody who's a live human to help me because this is not. And so that is the baseline of how we started to learn about chatbots. But I have to say that with the technology moving forward, agents have come a really long way. Our context windows have grown, and we are now able to have a mixture of experts, which what that means is that instead of just having it have a broad-based span of information that it's been trained on, it could have multiple different expertise, so to speak. So it could have an expertise in health. It could have an expertise in art. It could have an expertise in computer science. And with those expertise coming in, it can give you more information that's more directed to what your needs are, and hopefully help you to resolve or move forward from where you're challenged or stuck with calling like a help desk and getting a chatbot to interact with you. So as they're getting more intelligent, they're able to do more, and they're able to help and assist with more. So hopefully what you'll see is as the technology continues to push forward and the technology gets cheaper, as we learn, like every day there's new breakthroughs, you'll start to see a lot of that take place within what you are working with on a day in, day out basis. So hopefully that'll be helpful, and you'll start to see that. To go back to the timeline, so we talked about that North Star of AI. We're not there yet. And we're not looking for it to ever become like the Terminator or anything like that. But where are we right now? Well, we are at a place where we're trying to really have image generation, text generation, conversational agents, which, Steve, we just talked about, to chess playing computers, to predictions and automation engines, to self-driving cars. They all are relying on deep learning and this natural language processing, which we talked about. And as the technology gets better and we have more breakthroughs, we have more and more preciseness as to what we need to know, what the machines need to be able to provide to us. And we go from there using these technologies to helpfully be able to give us towards our goal of producing large amounts of processing these large amounts of data and recognizing patterns, so that way they can give us better outcomes. So really the whole point is to really have better, more precise outcomes within itself. So large language models, like we talked about from the definition, they have a lot of different capabilities. Here's just some of them. Like we talked about, you can do content generation. You can do summarization. You can, distill information and have a summary based on it that has better, has better precision to it. It can help with research and brainstorming. This is a great way to be able to start like a project or a paper or even a campaign, and being able to start with, sometimes it's really challenging to start with that blank white piece of paper. And so what this does is it helps you to at least give you a context to start with. You also have things like data analysis, where you can gain it has analytical capabilities and can give you more insights. And also from a coding perspective, where it can streamline coding workflows, and it can actually offer assistive behaviors with prompting for, let's say, like a developer, to help them to do everything from set up their IDE through giving them suggestions on what their next prompt should be. So the next slide. These are just more examples of what models can do. So this just gives a whole slew of different types of things that take place. Everything from speech recognition through graphic analytics, through looking at things such as representation learning, music generation, image creation, and onwards and onwards. There is a lot of different things, and it can be used in a lot of different mediums and methods. And so you can have it help you with finding out information from, let's say, the new, like from not the news, but from, let's say, for like health information on you, to, let's say, like figuring out to put tasks together or solving a math equation. The one thing that you should know is that these models are trained, and so it's not the same as real world up to date, right? So it's going to be based on when it got its last training or set of data and when it was last fine-tuned. So it might not have necessarily what took place in the news from 6 hours ago or from 6 days ago, depending on when it was trained, but it will give you information based on the training set of data that it has in front of it. So a little bit different than what you would think about from Google search. Like if you think about Google search, anything that is up on the internet, the web, you can actually go out and find. Whereas with a model, it's more or less what it's been trained on is what outputs it can give you back. So I wanted to talk about what an LLM can't do. And there's been so many changes since January of 2024. This is where I wanted to kind of talk about how fast the technology is really moving. And so from math, back in, I gave a webinar in January 2024, and I used the slide, but I've added the green to it to kind of talk about where we are from today standards as well. So when we started this and we had this conversation a little over a year ago, LLMs didn't understand the rules of mathematics. So you couldn't actually get it to solve an equation and explain to you how it solved it. Since then, we now have better, more accurate math. We have near human accuracy, and it was best in math at it, and an AI bot won the recent Math Olympiad. So it's actually come a very far way in just over 15 months, where it now is very reliable, and it could show its steps, it could repeat them, and it could solve. From a reasoning perspective, while LLMs performed well on common sense reasoning, they were really poor 15 months ago on requiring deeper reasoning skills. As of today, some of the different models, such as GPT-4 or Claude, are better reasoning without hallucinations. And just to give you another definition of a hallucination is a output from a model that seems and looks to be real and valid and truthful, but in fact, it's not. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But with a hallucination, just to give you an example of what they are, GPT-4 used to have in there where you could prompt it to draw a right arrow, and it would do that. But then when you gave it the prompt to draw a left arrow, it could not do it. It could not draw a left arrow. They've since been able to fine tune and train it to be able to do that. The other piece is that if you had asked GPT how many R's are in strawberry, it said 2. Again, a hallucination. So just to note that now we've come a really far way with being able to root out a lot of hallucinations, but it's not necessarily perfect to this day. But we have a lot of nuances, and we can ask a lot of niche questions today, which we couldn't do 15 months ago. From a planning perspective, initial studies had seen that they show that LLMs were particularly not great on and they would be considered really poor planning tasks, including the plan generation and being able to reuse or doing replanning work. Since then, I've already mentioned our historical context windows are growing, and with massive improvements, DeepSeek can achieve thought planning with less GPUs, using what we call that mixture of experts. So expertise in lots of little areas, almost like microservices, to allow us to really have more intelligent responding and being able to think through and continue the train of thought from the machine perspective. Describing how they solve problems. There was a significant limitation where an LLM could not talk about how they arrived at a solution, which in a life or death situation was not great. And what ended up happening is we needed to fix this. So if you had asked, let's say, a model like GPT, how did you get to the solution? It wouldn't be able to explain that to you. Now, in 2025, it not only can present all of its solving steps in it, it can make those inferences from zero-shot learning from things that it was not trained on to help fortify its knowledge and its base. Contextual understanding. LLMs had lacked context for data they used to make decisions, posing problems for decision making in the real world. And we now have agents that can decision on behalf of users for specific tasks. We can see this all the time with, if you see any of the newer agents and how they're running, they can plan, they can schedule, they can put meetings together, they can do a lot of different activities on behalf of the actual end user. And they used to not be able to have all of this in a one-stop shop, right? So doing things like music, art, image creation, doing text summarization, doing research. It was just too big, too expensive, and too slow. And now there's been a lot of reduction in our complexity. There's a lot of things that have become faster and cheaper. We've been able to split the float points, so we can get more for less. And we can now look at bots and we can put them into a mobile AI with a mixture of experts, which is amazing if you think about it, because just the sheer size of what they were even 15 months ago, we wouldn't have had any of these capabilities on our mobile devices. So as you can see, the technology is moving really fast, and I'm really interested to see a year from now where we're at from the AI perspective, because I have a feeling we're going to be a lot sooner. Maybe they'll even be walking my dog by then if I had a dog. So they could walk the dog that I will have by that point.
They can walk my dog anytime because I don't always like to do that. So, and it's amazing how much it has changed since we did that program. It was now, 15 months or
Yeah.
so, and quite a lot has changed. We're starting to get some viewer questions, which is great. So I'll go ahead and read one. Actually, I'll put this up on the screen. Let's see how it shows. It came through Facebook. And here we go. So for Marcus, how do you quantitatively measure and benchmark hallucination rates in generative AI systems? Are there industry standard metrics, or is this still subjective?
So that's a great question. I think there's still it's still pretty subjective. We have different thoughts on how we can measure, but there hasn't been a full out alliance or alignment on how we can do measurements going across the board. I'm happy to kind of delve into this in a little bit more depth offline if we want to connect post session, because that's going to go into a little bit more of a deep answer than keeping it more from a 101 level. But I would be happy to talk about that as well.
And certainly, if anyone has questions for Stacy that require an answer that would be a little bit too much in depth for us to cover in this program, just hit me up on email and I can make the connection, and we can have these conversations offline, because these are great questions. Some go quite into some depth, and we have just about a little bit less than half an hour left and want to get to as many of these as possible. Here's one I'll put up here coming from Facebook from Gene. How do we know when we need to fact check AI, or at this time, is it always a best practice to check?
So that's a great question. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this presentation as well, about having humans in the loop. My suggestion is we still need to check, and from my own experiences, I would say that we want to make sure that we're still fact checking. We're still, we still understand, again, like the system at hand is only referencing the information that it has been trained on, right? So it might not have what happened, like I said, 6 hours ago or 6 days ago. And if something does not look right, don't take it to be the source of truth. As a human, we still have that perception and cognition to be able to go in and really, scratch our heads and say, like, gee, strawberry, does it really have 2 R's in it? I don't think so. So I think we still have to rely on ourselves to really be able to take some of the onus and be able to test, or at least, verify what it's saying and what it's stating as an output.
And I have 2 questions from Tony. Here's the first one. Many years ago, I watched the Nova episode where IBM's Watson competed against Jeopardy champs. At one point, the IBM scientists were amazed at what Watson was doing. Do we really understand how an AI is thinking?
So that's a really interesting question. I worked for IBM, and one of my first days was on the raised floor, and I got to meet Deep Blue, which was really cool as well. But do we really understand? We understand how a model is working. We understand how artificial intelligence is working from the neural networks. We understand that it's taking and it's encoding everything into numbers and then coming out with other numbers. There's a lot of complexity to how it's working today, but we do understand. Now, where it gets interesting is when an AI decides that it doesn't like, or it needs to continue based off of where its guardrails have been set, and it feels that it needs to persevere. And so there's some interesting dynamics associated to that as to why is it jumping the guardrails that are still open conversation topics, and we're still learning about as we go. But from the most part, we do know how the information comes in, how it's trained, how the processing is done, and how the outputs are displayed.
I have one more question. And so I mentioned if people had questions for me that are a little bit more complicated or things that we can answer during the show, to email me. So I'll put that back up and leave it for a few seconds as I go now to the second of the 2 questions from Tony. How much are AIs contributing to their own development and advancements in the field? And related, is there a need for placing limits on an individual AI's growth?
These are very deep questions. So I missed, actually, Steve, part of the first question. I'm sorry.
Let me jump back in here. So how much are AIs contributing to their own development and advancements in the field? And related to that, is there a need for placing limits on an individual AI's growth?
So these are really interesting questions. So the first one is talking about how is it advancing on its own without training. So the basis for everything is the training, right? So it needs to have training, and there's many different methods for training. Like I mentioned supervised, unsupervised, and there's also reinforcement learning, which is when a machine gives an output and then might ask for feedback on it. So it knows, okay, this was a better response, or this was not as good of a response. So it knows for next time of how to better address something that would be a prompt that would be similar in nature. With things like zero-shot learning, it is able to inference and reference other things that it, other instances maybe of things that it has not been trained on, but it still has limitations associated to that. When we get into something about guardrails, where we're setting up and saying, here is the confines of what we want this system to do, we're still working through a lot of this, right? We hear about things such as constitutional AI. We hear about, ethics in AI, and how do we make sure that we're building something that is ethical and that is, unbiased and, is ultimately giving us appropriate facts and giving us appropriate outputs. And I think this is still a work in progress. I think that the technology has come really far in a lot of these different areas, but I think there's still a lot to go, and we're still working on rooting out hallucinations. And that is just done by continuing to see where things come out and humans fact checking and going back and having to fine tune and train and retrain models as well. So let's kind of jump into AI in the wild. I know that I was asked earlier about some examples. So up on the page here is a whole lot of different stuff. And what this is this is showing all different ways that you may be interacting with artificial intelligence today. So I have up in the corner a little chatbot guy. If you're on Google and you do a Google search, you can see actually Gemini comes in and it will give you a response. If you want to see something that doesn't necessarily always work, Gemini is a really interesting LLM that sometimes you get really great information. Sometimes it's not. And again, you're the human, so you need to really decipher what is really the source of truth in there. We have things such as Alexa's on here. We have Microsoft 365 Copilot. So anybody who's using a more recent version of Microsoft Outlook and Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, if you take a look at them, they have something called Copilot associated, where it can help you write your emails. It can help you to create a new deck. There's a plethora of different functions and assistive behaviors that Copilot, which is an agent, is helping out with today. I also have on here just a couple of the other, like OpenAI's GPT-4, Llama 3, which are all large language models, Anthropic as well. And I have on here AI robot, which there's an image, as you can see, of this robot, which looks very human, except for her arms. And right to the left of there's an image, and that's an image of Alan Turing. And it was actually sold through Sotheby's back at the end of last year. And within 27 bids, it was originally proposed to go for about $180,000. Again, this was created by a robot. This is artificial intelligence creating art. It actually went for $1.8 million. So with my art degree and some AI, there's still hope. There's still hope. But what we can see is that even in the space of generating unique art, it's really starting to take off as well. So it's pretty amazing. So, and then knowing, was this really done by a human? Was this done by a bot? Sometimes it's really challenging to know. Just to talk about some other AI that's hidden in our everyday, just things like our traffic streetlights, closed circuit TV monitoring. The train systems, transit in Japan and UK are using artificial intelligence. Shopping self-checkouts are using artificial intelligence. Credit cards, how they're determining things such as credit lines, how they're determining what it could be suspicion of fraud. Pricing for the housing rental market was actually, there was some articles last year about what was transpiring with that, with artificial intelligence. Some of the chips in smartphones that are now being used have AI in them. Network switches and routers, such as what Cisco develops. And within Europe, I believe it might be Norway, the electric grid, their actual electricity is actually managed with artificial intelligence as well. So as you can see, it's growing and it's being utilized more and more in different facets of your everyday life. So it could be something that's as simple as like on your device itself. And it could be something that could be with when you're driving to work, or when you're going to the food store, or just switching on your light, depending on where you are at. And so as we see, it's becoming more and more a part of our everyday society. So the why, and I know this came up before with talking about how do we know and talking about hallucinations. So how do we really accept and trust and integrate these capabilities without rejection or fear? And this is a big piece of it, right? Because here we are talking about all the different things and all the different places that AI is at, but we don't want to think about it from like that movie, The Terminator, right? We want to think about how is it going to assist us and make our lives better, and really to have it be transparent and have ethical AI is going to really be really super relevant to our experiences with it. And this really brings together how we would enable AI and machine learning for everyday experiences. And this comes into the humans, what I call humans within the loops. And really, humans are us as users. We need controls and ethics built into processes and digital products. Otherwise, technologies will get blamed for, technology will get blamed on the individual. And we don't want that to happen. So we don't want people to end up doing something that was really at fault of the technology. And so while we can get frustrated by those chatbots or different devices or sites, they place a large amount of trust in technology, and we need to place a large amount of trust in technology at times to protect us from, unintended misuse and risk. Parts of this, though, is we are placing a lot of significant responsibility on you, the end user, whether it be with Alexa or Siri, or whether it be with that we're shopping carts and we're checking out, or any of the other facets that we've discussed. We're placing it on you to really make sure that what is said, is it really the truth, or do we really need to fact check it? Like, does strawberry have two R's? I don't think it does. The longer the disclaimers and acknowledgement statements are, the higher chance it is that we don't take time to read it. So I equate this back to everybody on your smartphones today. You want to go get a new app from Google Play or the App Store, and it gives you a whole scrolling list where you'll scroll through like 3-point type to just hit accept. And the majority of individuals out there are not taking the time to read that. And it puts us at a disadvantage, because when you see those disclaimers, reading them will help you to be wise as to what we should be looking out for. And it might seem like not very fun to read them. In the long run, it's going to actually be really helpful. And people really don't want to take the time to understand the outputs, especially if they're in a time crunch. But again, if you just take everything for face value, you could end up introducing bigger problems into whatever you were using this information for. And unfortunately, most people don't go back to validate, especially if it looks correct. And so there in itself is the issue. And when we go back to talking about hallucinations, you want to make sure that we are just taking a second to gut check what it's telling us and making sure that it aligns with what we feel like is our reasonable standards. So with that, here's just a little bit of an ethical checklist of talking about fairness, accountability, responsibility, and privacy. And the reason I have this is because it kind of gives us a backbone as to when we're using any kinds of models and looking at the outputs or using agents or anything really, we want to make sure that it's aligning to what we would think of from our real world understanding and contextual knowledge. So by saying, like, is the application inclusive of its intended outcomes? Can its actions be perceived as reasonable? So if we're seeing something and it doesn't make sense, the chance is it's probably that there's something that's not accurate in that. And so don't take that for what it is. Maybe dig a little bit more deeply into it. Maybe try different types of prompting into the system as well. Does the does the user understand, that you're interacting with an AI? I think this is becoming more and more relevant as AI becomes more influential in our everyday environments. Do you really know when you're interacting with it? And you should become aware of that as well. And are the outputs from the AI relevant to the context, or is it giving you some output that doesn't make any sense? From accountability and responsibility, do the outcomes, do they look like they're trustworthy? Are the origins of the data, is it trustworthy? Do you know where it's sourcing its training information from? Is it considered to be clear and transparent? So do you understand what it's trying to tell you? Is it giving you information back that resides and meets your standards of what you would be expecting? Is there sufficient confidence in how it's going to handle your prompts? And then, is there enough due diligence? So again, this goes back to the humans in the loop, and it goes back to like verify, and don't necessarily take the first outcome as the correct one, especially if it's something to do with, timelines, news, things of that nature, because again, depending on the models and the training, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has all of that relevancy to it. From a privacy perspective, there could be reputational risk, there could be regulatory or legal exposure, or there could be sensitive or personal data at risk for unintended use or exposure. So we want to be really careful about that as well. And what is it giving us as outcomes, or what are we giving to it that we're giving it information as well? So we want to make sure that we have full awareness into everything that we're doing, and this will give us more confidence in how we are interacting with an agent, with an LLM, or with any kinds of artificial intelligence. So that way we can be confident and we can use it appropriately. So we should use, our guidelines and moral principles, and having clear standards and communications, really addressing that bias and fairness to prevent harm, fostering trust, reducing risk, and ensuring the experiences are clear and transparent is really the key to success. So I want to now ask another question, as we've been talking through all of these fundamentals of AI, and now thinking about it from the first question of, do you use AI? And some of you may have answered yes, some have maybe answered no, and some possibly. And now go back and rethink that same question in your answer, because it might have changed. And now, with that said, what would you want to use AI for? And would you want it to help you by being a virtual assistant, helping with different types of activities, to find things like my phone or my car keys, or assisting with repetitive tasks such as laundry or grocery shopping? Or what do you envision that AI could help you with? And the sky's the limit with really where it's going to. And so this is something to think about and see really what is out there that could meet your needs and potentially be able to help you in your AI journeys. So just to give some next steps, to become an expert end user of AI, you want to focus on the AI fundamentals and mastering the tools and practicing in real world applications and staying up to date with the latest advancements and considerations. With this said, you really want to play with the tools, and you want to just start to mix with them and integrate them into your everyday behaviors, whether it be part of what you do when you log in the morning for your work, whether it be something that you utilize through your phone or through another device system like an Alexa or through like a Google device. But you want to make sure that you're starting to play with them. And it's okay that you don't get things right away. There's no harm in that. It's all about you becoming comfortable with the technology, and so you can continue to grow with the technology as well. The basic AI concepts, we really covered most of them today. So you already have the first piece checked off on your list. So congratulations on that. The the next piece is really mastering the AI tools and techniques. So you really want to understand machine learning. You really want to understand data handling and visualization. Looking at things such as how AI agents are making decisions through trial and error. And this is through using AI. So you could download, there's a free version of GPT. You could use Gemini as part of Google. There's a lot of access to different large language models. There is a lot of access to even playing around with just a bot today, because there's so many different virtual bots. Just play around with it, and it's okay. We talk about failing fast in data science, so that way we know that we can move on and we can take our lessons learned. So we want to, as it says in the next piece, practical experience, hands-on. You want to really be trying to use it and say, like, maybe I'm going to do a project where I'm going to plan out my entire weekend using an AI to do it. You could also join AI communities where you can connect with other enthusiasts and share knowledge and learn from their experiences as well. And that's a great way to continue the conversation, ask questions, and feel like you're in a really amenable audience surrounded by your peers. Staying up to date and understanding ethical considerations. So you want to really understand, like I said, the ethical implications and have responsible AI practices. You really want to evaluate the information that is presented to you. Like we said, don't just necessarily take it for face value. And you want to continuously be reading up on this, saying like, oh, there's a new version. Maybe I should try that new version and install it just to see how it works or what it does. And then specific skills, prompt engineering, learn how to effectively communicate with AI models. Again, you could do this just through playing around with one of the free models that you can actually download to your mobile device. AI literacy, developing a general understanding of technologies and their applications, and problem solving. Use this to solve real world problems and make informed decisions on. So even use this to create your next presentation or to write an email or to plan out, like I said, like a vacation or a weekend somewhere. So there's a lot of different ways that you can actually integrate and use it, and you'll become more of an expert the more that you use this technology today. So this really concludes, and I know we're at the top of the hour here, but I really appreciate everybody taking the time today to sit and learn, and if you have questions moving forward, I'm more than happy to answer them, especially if they're in depth. I'm happy to take them offline. You can feel free to email Steve and he can get them over to me, or you can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, and this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. And I hope everybody has something that they've taken away for their toolbox to be more successful with integrating and using AI moving forward as part of your daily practice.
Well, Stacy, thank you. We have just a couple of minutes left, and there are two questions I know I wanted to get to, but it was interesting about uses for AI, and one of them that I saw on the previous slide was about finding lost keys, and I really could have used that earlier this week, where I was going nuts trying to find a car key for like 3 days, and then my son finds it and asks me for a finder's fee. The chatbot wouldn't have done that, so I didn't pay the fee, if anybody's wondering about that. He does get very well taken care of, so it wasn't really necessary. But we'll take one of the viewer questions. This one: now that AI can generate art, writing, and music, do you think we are losing an aspect of human creativity? And what about possible job losses in the fine arts? That's a great question. The second question really ties a little bit into tomorrow's webinar on AI and careers, but certainly we can touch it now.
So, do I think that we're going to lose creativity? I think what it does, instead of losing creativity, I think it opens up for those who maybe didn't have an avenue or a voice before to be able to enter into the realm of doing art or doing music, creating imagery where maybe they didn't have that skill set before. So this is really helping others to be able to do some of the other capabilities that maybe they didn't have previously. With this said, does it take away from it? Well, it's interesting when we think about it, right? From Sotheby's, where 1.8 million for a piece of art that was generated by a bot. I think there's always going to be something for the tangible art. Maybe this is me speaking because I still do art, but I think that there's always going to be something for the tangible and for the non-digital as well. And I think that, we all, there's still a love for that. I think with music as well, it'll be interesting to see if you listen today to some of the channels in Spotify or Apple Music. Are they device generated, or is it actually music that was created by somebody? And I think that the line is getting more and more soft between the two. But again, I think talent will always have talent, and it will always still hopefully shine through with this. But happy to dissect that further.
And just for fun, about a few months ago, I played around in ChatGPT and I said, write an alumni news article about, and there's a profile about a particular alum.
I think
and then
Steve is running
you
short here.
hear me okay?
It's not floating.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me okay now?
Now
okay,
we
great.
do.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what happened just there, but I'll just go ahead and start this over for the benefit of those who didn't hear it. A while back, I had written an alumni news article about someone, and then I had ChatGPT write an article about the same person. So I wanted to put them side by side and see, can you easily tell what's the AI generated content versus the human touch? And you really could. And maybe with a little bit more energy and trying to make the prompt better, I could have got the gap a little bit smaller, but based on what I've seen, you can tell the difference.
It's still pretty relevant that there is a difference. So it's not as warm, it's not as personal as it would be from you writing it, which is why they say if you're doing something like that, to go back and read what it is and go back and then massage the output of it, because it's not necessarily going to be written from the same perspective as a human. Now, we get closer and closer to that every day as we have new breakthroughs in the technology itself. But with this said, it's still not, again, we're still not there. We're still not 100% there. And so we continue to really still need to use our human brain and still use our cognition and perception to really get us over the line. But this helps us as a starting place. And I will say that we do know the difference. So you can see when it's a prompt output. I do content selection for a conference, and I can tell you when it's come right from a LLM. GPT-4 produced this, and you can tell. So unless they've updated and just used it as a starter, you can see when it's just all done by artificial intelligence versus having a human intervention or a human in the loop with it.
And that brings us to our last question. Are there any recommendations you have on how to continue educating ourselves on AI? Free courses.
It's hanging again, Steve.
I'll try again. Is this better?
That's better.
Okay, great. I'm going to make sure I don't leave and go backstage, and I will stay here because I feel like that's the common thread messing it up here, is that I keep going and coming back. So I'll try again with the question. Are there any recommendations that you have on how to continue educating ourselves on AI, such as free courses, if any? And I'll share that it was a little bit of a cost, not much, but I took a specialization on Coursera. It was offered by Vanderbilt on prompt engineering and ChatGPT, which gave a lot of opportunities to go in and play around with these things. And it's like a lot of things. The more you touch it, and the more you do it, I think you just get you're comfortable and better at it. But eager to hear your thoughts on it too.
So I think that, there's a ton of offerings out there. Through your companies, a lot of times they'll pay for courses as well, because AI is becoming such a big notion in almost every vertical industry that we're in. I also think that really simplicity. Download like GPT, download one of the LLMs and play around with it. And I think that that is one of the best ways, like Steve said, to start to learn about it. And read the tech blogs, read, the news that's coming out, because it'll help to keep you informed as to where the technology breakthroughs are taking place and occurring.
Awesome. And on that note, we will go ahead and wrap up as we're a little bit past the top of the hour. But as Stacy said before, just put this graphic up and I'll keep it on for the rest of the webinar as we wrap up here in the next 1 or 2 minutes. I have a few comments, but go ahead and email me your questions. If there's anything that we didn't get to today, if it's a simple question or complex or somewhere in the middle, and you're really eager to know the answer to the question, go ahead and send it to me and I'll forward it to Stacy, and we keep the connection going and make sure everybody gets the information that they wanted. And as I always say, if we're in a situation where we helped out at least one person and you learned something new, it was worth it to leave the house today and come do this program. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here and to do that. And so, Stacy, thank you so much, because as always, you're so generous with your time and your knowledge, and always willing to help out alumni, both in the form of these webinars, but then also in the context that take place after the show is done and people reach out to you electronically. So thank you again for being with us. Appreciate it very much.
Happy to help. Thank you so much for having me today.
And that will wrap it up. And as I mentioned at the start of the program, we have a webinar tomorrow at noon Eastern, Friend or Foe, looking at the impact of AI on careers. And so that last question, or one of the last questions that we had here in the webinar, asking about the potential impact of AI on careers in the fine arts. That's one of the things that we will be looking at, not so much fine arts in particular, but we will be looking at AI and careers and what this could mean as far as job creation, or does it do things in the opposite direction? And certainly that may give us reason to be concerned depending on the type of work that somebody is doing. So join us at noon Eastern. If you did not register for that webinar, don't worry, you can go to our Facebook page, the Binghamton University Alumni Association Facebook page, and we'll be broadcasting live through there. So you can definitely check us out. So if you didn't register for the tomorrow webinar, don't worry about it. It's open and available without having to have the custom viewing link that we send out when you do register. So, and as I said before, send me any questions that you want me to pass along to Stacy, and I will get that done. So. I just want to say one more time, thank you so much for joining us. Check us out at binghamton.edu/alumni to learn more about what it is that we have to offer here at your alumni association. All the stuff here that we do is really for your benefit, and very happy to be here and part of a program such as this. So go ahead and wrap it up for today and say, for Stacy Newman, I'm Steve Seepersod. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next webinar.